In the previous video, we encountered moral hazard as a type of principal-agent problem. In the moral hazard example, the problem is the hidden action after the contracting has already happened. But there is another type of principal-agent problem, and this is what we call adverse selection. In this case, there is hidden information. Usually, this information is about the type of things. It's about the type of car that you're selling, whether it's a high quality or low quality car, or it is about your own type as a potential agent, whether you're the hardworking type or the lazy type, or the smart type or the not so smart type, or healthy or unhealthy. Essentially, information that is private to one side in the market. And the consequence of this information asymmetry is something that we call adverse selection. And in the extreme case, this can lead to a market unraveling completely. No market existing, a missing market. And that, of course, is a type of market failure. And the best example for this is George Akerlof's market for lemons. But, of course, George Akerlof didn't mean those types of lemons. He meant lemons in the American vernacular for used cars. Bad used cars are lemons. So what is this market for lemons, and how does adverse selection work? The original example of the market for lemons, of course, are used cars. Let's say there are 10 used cars in this market, and they range from sort of low quality, bad used cars with lots of problems and repairs and things that break down, lemons in other words, on the left, to really good, really high quality used cars that don't break down, peaches in the American vernacular, to the right. Before we get lost in our fruity metaphors here with lemons and peaches, let's remove those ideas and think about the sort of true underlying value of these cars. And we can express this in pounds. So they range from a really crappy used car on the left, the real lemon, which is worth zero. The owner wants to get rid of it as quickly as possible, to the really high quality used car that is still worth £9,000. And we can think of this value as the value to the seller. How much do these sellers think their cars are still worth their used cars? Because they are the ones who know about the hidden problems, the gearbox that needs replacement and other repair issues the cars might have. So the seller knows the true sort of underlying value of the car to them. But of course, the buyer, potential buyer, doesn't know this. He doesn't or she doesn't know the true sort of underlying value of the car. She just wants to buy a used car, but she doesn't know whether she's going to get the sort of crappy lemon type car or the really high quality used car. She just wants to buy one car. And this is at the core of the problem, of course. These valuations are private to the seller. It's hidden information. The seller knows, the buyer doesn't know the true underlying value of the car. So the question then, of course, is how much should the buyer be willing to pay for a used car? Well, maybe she knows something about previously traded cars and sort of the underlying distribution of cars. There are some really good cars and some really bad cars. So there's some sort of information about that there's high value cars and low value cars in the market. So how much should the buyer offer? Well, the average, of course. If the buyer knows that there are 10 cars in the market and they range from £0 true underlying value to £9,000 true sort of underlying value, then she should offer for an average car, because she's unable to see which one it is, the one that she's looking at, then she should offer on average for this car £4,500. And this makes complete sense. But here's the catch. The seller of the highest quality used cars are maybe not willing to sell at a price that is too low for them. So let's assume that sellers are not willing to sell their car for less or equal to half of what they think it is worth. So for the person selling the £9,000 peach car all the way on the right, the £4,500 offer is really, really low. So as a consequence, this seller exits the market and says, no, I'd rather keep my used car a little longer and sell it if it has deteriorated some more, or don't sell it at all until it breaks. But that, of course, means that this average value is no longer correct. There are no £9,000 worth cars in the market. So the next round, so to say, the buyer has to adjust their offer. So they wouldn't want to offer £4,500 for an average car in this market, because the average car in this market now is only worth £4,000. So she offers £4,000. And that's great. That's the average. That's a good guess for what an average used car should be worth. But we have the same problem as before. The seller of the highest rated car that's left, the £8,000 car, is no longer willing to sell their car for this low price. So as a consequence, the £4,000 offer is now too high and has to be adjusted to £3,500. But of course, that makes the £7,000 car exit the market, which lowers the average, which makes another sort of high quality car exit the market, which lowers the average, which again makes more high quality cars exit the used car market, and the price is going down. And this process, of course, continues. Another high quality car exits, the price lowers, another quality car exits, the price gets lower, and now we're already very far from the initial market where there were lots of high quality used cars. And at the end, we end up in a situation where there's one really, really crappy car that is worth nothing, and £1,000 car that's also already not very good, and the buyer is willing to offer £500 for it, but that's too little for the £1,000 car seller, so they also drop out of the market, and all that is left is the lemon. The worst used cars imaginable are left in the market, and nothing else. And this is what economists call unraveling. The market unravels, it disappears until only the worst sort of lemons, the worst examples are left. We have just seen what can happen due to information asymmetry. A market participants know something that the other side does not know, and as a consequence, in the sort of rather extreme example, of course, of the market for lemons, everything unravels. And this, of course, is a market failure. There's a missing market. People should be trading these used cars in the lemons example, but the market unravels and doesn't take place. And more generally, even if the market doesn't unravel completely, we may end up sort of in this low quality, low price equilibrium where only rather crappy cars get traded and people are only willing to pay a low price for them. And in general, this kind of problem, the pressure that underlies the market for lemons, of course, is what we call adverse selection. There's a selection effect that happens that affects adversely the market participants. And there are other examples, of course, of this. Think about, comprehensive coverage, sort of car insurance, full insurance. Who chooses this? Well, those who are the risky drivers, of course, those who think they will need it. So the premiums are going to be very high. Who buys iPhone insurance? Well, people who are clumsy, of course, or forget their phone or dropped it or so. They're more likely to buy insurance, of course. Or another nice example is an all-you-can-eat buffet. Who goes to a restaurant that offers an all-you-can-eat buffet? Somebody who's planning to eat a lot of food, I think. These are all examples of adverse selection. Essentially, the bad crowds out the good. Let's think about some more examples of adverse selection. Essentially, there's always a principal who selects an agent who has private, hidden information about themselves or some product they're selling or something like that, okay? And so our first example is already here. The buyer wants to buy a used car. The seller has private information, that is the quality of the used car. The next example, I think, is also quite intuitive. Of course, it's concerning health insurance. Health insurance companies offer premiums, offer plans to customers, But of course, the problem is that those customers who are most likely to expect to need health insurance would be most likely to buy health insurance if there's no state covered health insurance, for example. So who wants to buy health insurance? Well, somebody who's already sick, has pre-existing conditions, for example, would love health insurance, of course. Or if you know that you have health problems or will have health problems, are at high risk maybe of developing health problems, you are more likely to want to cover yourself. And of course, this sort of asymmetry in the sense that people who will rely on it most are most likely to demand it means that the premiums are going to be high for those people who are less likely to demand it. For them, the cost of insurance is going to be too high, and so they will maybe opt out if they have a very healthy lifestyle or don't think they will need it or are younger. They may opt out of insurance, which of course then drives up the premiums. And we'll talk about health insurance in the next video. The key is always about distinguishing between different types of people, types of market participants. Take the next example. As an employer, you want a good, hard-working workforce. You want employees who work hard and focus at work and are smart and well-educated and whatnot. But of course, that's really hard to know ex ante. So like you face these job applicants and you have no idea whether they're the hardworking type, whether they are smart. You don't know. So you have to find a way to find out. And this hidden information is basically the intelligence or the work ethic or something like that. And that's why things like education, that is, can signal quality, or things like letters of recommendation, etc., are really important. The last example of adverse selection is something familiar to political scientists. Voters want smart politicians who implement the policy that they want and who are not corrupt. But of course, what if the very fact that it's a political job attracts certain types, the bad types, the corrupt types? Then it's very, very important and hard maybe to screen out those types. What I want you to do now is I want you to again pause the video, take a second, think about your own example, be creative, be original, and post and vote. Post on Moodle and vote for your classmates' examples on Moodle. There are probably some objections. Well, you've told me this toy example of the market for lemons, Roland, but of course, used car markets exist, and they exist for all sorts of cars, not only crappy lemons like the picture we had before. And you're right. But there are two things. The first thing is there is a huge drop in price after driving off the yard of the dealership. A car that is worth £30,000, you own it for a few weeks or months, and it's only worth half that. Okay. So there is definitely an effect here. But there are also, of course, solutions to the lemons problem, to the adverse selection problem. People are not stupid. They don't just face this problem. They think about solutions to the problem. And so how do we do it? Well, we think about sort of manufacturer certificates, the manufacturer certifying the quality of the used car. For example, by completing all sorts of checks, yearly checks and these kind of things. So there's mechanisms for the seller to show that their car is truly a good used car. But there are also, of course, also mechanisms for the buyer to know something about those cars. So they can bring a knowledgeable friend, for example, who knows something about cars to sort of kick the tires, have a look around the car, have a look at the engine, sort of have a look whether this is any good. And if people buy houses or those kinds of very big ticket items, for example, they will pay someone like a surveyor to come and sort of investigate what's going on there. Or you can rely on some magazines like Which, websites that kind of give you some sort of ideas which types or specific brands or models of cars are more likely to break down than others. So the used car market is full of sort of these tricks and tips and tweaks and mechanisms to ensure that the car is actually a good one or worth the money that the buyer is paying. And economists think about these devices as signaling and screening models, screening tools. So what are signaling and screening devices? Well, signaling devices are basically on the side of the seller in the used car example, or on the side of the job applicant, if you want the employee-employer sort of example. So education is a pretty good example of this. Why are you getting a master's that forces you to take quantitative methods exams and sort of a public economics class with lots of graphs and sort of hard content? Well, basically, taking a degree like this is a way for you to signal to employers that you're the smart and hardworking type. The very fact that you're able to pass sort of exams or difficult problem sets in quantitative methods, say, shows potential employers that you're both clever and work hard enough to do it. So there is, of course, a value of education in terms of actually learning something. I'm a firm believer in this, else I wouldn't be in this job. But education also serves as a costly sort of signaling device for example, jobs. That's on the side of the sort of seller or the employee or job applicant. What about the buyer, the principal or the employer? Well, they use what is called screening devices or screening models. So if you think about the insurance company example, if we think that sort of the bad drivers, the reckless drivers are more likely to buy car insurance, then what can we do? Well, we can basically let them select into different types by themselves, into different plans, for example, by themselves. For example, by offering two different plans, a high premium sort of full coverage option and a low premium sort of option with higher deductibles, with co-pays, but a much lower cost. And basically, people will self-select, of course, into these different types of contracts. If you know that you're the bad type, the bad driver type, which one are you going to choose? Well, you're going to choose the full cover kind of option. And if you know that you're experienced driver and you're very good at this, you're more likely to choose the sort of high deductible copay low cost option. So insurance companies and other companies are able to screen by letting applicants or drivers in this case sort of select into these different types of price options or plans. So the sellers are able to engage in sort of signaling, the buyers are able to engage in screening maybe. So what else can we do? What else can we do to resolve the adverse selection problem? Well, in general, reduce the information asymmetry. If the principal is able to get more information, if the buyer is able to get more information about those cars, then of course the information asymmetry is reduced and we're getting closer to the sort of normal shape of the market. So let's see an example of that. What else can, for example, insurance companies do to reduce this information asymmetry? In the UK, there are already car insurance companies that basically install a device in your, or offer to install a device in your vehicle that tracks your driving, that is connected to a GPS system and knows when you're sort of speeding, etc. And they're able to price your plans accordingly. A few years ago, there was a kerfuffle, and this is what's on the right here, about one of the car insurance companies basically saying, like, look, give us access to your Facebook data, to your Facebook feed, and we'll lower your premiums. And of course, what they were trying to do is use some machine learning techniques to figure out who the bad drivers are, who are the people that cause accidents. But there was a bit of an outcry, and so in the end, this was dropped. And it has a certain Orwellian quality to it, doesn't it? If you're interested in health insurance in this country, for example, there is a company called Vitality, and what they offer is all sorts of normal health insurance things, but they also say, like, look, you should you can get a free Apple Watch as long as you let us monitor all the data that comes from it. So they are able to build a pretty good picture of your sort of health behavior in terms of your heart rate and these kind of things, but as well as of course your sort of exercise and lifestyle. So this is something that is of course incredibly intrusive, but people are willing to buy it, it seems. But of course, if this is possible, this is really, really good for the insurance company because they can make the information problem go away. So they can price their plans accordingly and make more money and kick out sort of the potential bad times. Well, that sounds great. The problem, of course, is if we were to use this for our system of health insurance more generally, for healthcare more generally, then of course it wouldn't be great, because we would exclude sick people or people with pre-existing conditions, etc., from health insurance, from coverage altogether. And this tension, of course, we know from the American healthcare market. So in the next video, we will look at the case study of healthcare and how it relates to information asymmetries and adverse selection.